for the past 18 years, I have not touched a book which is fictional in character. Not because I read too much of fiction during my early years, which is also true, but I guess over a period of time, your reading habits just evolve in the manner in which you would like to take them. But having said that, let me start by congratulating both Dr. Sapna Sharma and Kshitij for launching Soul Books. When I was listening to Kshitij talk and he was describing the trials and tribulations of first-time authors or new authors and the complete lack of transparency in the publishing industry, well, I couldn't help thinking that a while ago in a different avatar, I had to deal with the back end of the media. And the back end of the media, be it print, be it broadcasting, be it social media, is actually a very non-transparent street. So when he was describing the entire rigmarole of publishing, I was thinking to myself, well, that almost sounds like what the broadcasting industry is. And so therefore, it's indeed very gratifying that some people have decided to break the mold and actually step out and try and put in place a template which would give people not only the opportunity of being able to self-publish, but more importantly in knowing as to how exactly is the book doing, in terms of royalty, where do they stand, ultimately whether they would be making some revenue for the effort which they have put in. I can tell you a lot of authors do not really write for money, as Sapna was very rightly saying. You write because you're passionate about it, because it defines you. It's almost like a catharsis also, because putting pen to paper really, or putting your fingers to the keyboard, brings about a certain amount of integrity to the thought process, which you possibly would never really experience till the time you've really gone through the whole act of trying to do a book. And as someone who's done 2 over the last 45 odd months, I think, primarily because of political unemployment, and third one in the works, I can tell you it's indeed a very therapeutic experience. As I was saying, over a period of time, what I started reading was Iran and Afghanistan and the Al-Qaeda, and well, at some point in time, I feel that it's an extension of my interest in Commando comics, and I used to have a huge collection of them as a kid, so possibly I've extended that interest, and I try and satisfy myself by saying that, I've evolved from reading non-fiction, fiction to non-fiction, but possibly it's a strange kind of fiction which you still continue to read. So when I picked up this book and I carried it along with me, so I did the Mumbai launch of my own book 2 days ago, and I started going through it. I put it down after the first 8 or 10 pages. And the reason I put it down is because the book actually makes you confront certain realities. Certain realities about yourself, and as Dr. Sapna Sharma was saying, where you are headed, and what you really want out of life. And maybe those questions you are not prepared to answer, forget the world, even to your own self. And as Shabnamji was rightly saying, there are certain things that we want to lock away into the closet, happily absorbed in our activism, irrespective of whether it gets the country anywhere or not. That's a $1,000,000 question which all of us wrestle with on a daily basis. But I guess it's just easier to lead your life in that manner. And there comes a time when you keep thinking to yourself that yes, we need to look at certain issues, but this is not the time to look at it. And before you can say Jack Robinson, you've run through maybe the better part of your life, and by the time you start looking at those questions, they practically have become irrelevant because your children have grown up, your relationships have become estranged, you've become a stranger to your own self, you possibly don't recognize your own self when you look in the mirror, you've forgotten how to laugh, and the small things of life which actually made life worth living, you've decided to very conveniently, in the name of being serious about life, just sweep it under the carpet completely. And that's why as I try and read Dr. Sapna Sharma's book, and I'm deliberately reading it slowly, trying to absorb it, because it's different from what, as I said, I usually read, and every page brings about a certain introspective reality, which you can obviously, of course, choose to skim past if that's the intent of really going through a book. But if you do decide to pause, ponder, and introspect, I think there's a lot of food for thought in this book. And the other good thing about reading a book is because possibly when we grew up, there was no Kindle, there was no internet, newspapers still had a certain integrity to them. The whole art of reading was still something to be cherished and was encouraged. So the whole act of turning the page of a book is a different experience in itself. And I would just end by saying that all of us find it very easy these days, and that's something which is kind of marketed. But if you read a book on Kindle, it's much cheaper. You can download, you can highlight, you can mark out passages, you can go back to them, which is at times difficult to do. But the one thing that you need to remember is that every time that you use a cell phone, you use your Kindle, you go onto the internet, or you do anything which is connected with the wired world, you give a large part of your privacy away. So therefore, when you go and actually highlight something on Kindle, Kindle is sending information back, exactly mapping out what are the kind of things that you highlight, what is it that you go back and refer to, what is the kind of stuff which you've skimmed over, for example, if you've turned pages. So the next time you switch your Kindle on, you will get some very customized ads. So therefore, there is a whole industry which has grown around what is called data tracking. And that's why when some of the big businessmen of this country refer to data as the new oil, they are actually not wrong. So if you still value a bit of your privacy, I would strongly recommend that a paper book is a better way of actually going through life. Of course, there are certain things which are inevitable, but to the extent if you do value something which is called privacy, I think the traditional and the old way of doing things is still better. Thank you very much.